Ladies and gentlemen, today you're going to figure out the struggle of trying to predict the Portland Trail Blazers' potential lineup options in the 2022-2023 season. I did the exercise for you. I have 7 potential lineups, complete with a minutes breakdown by position. All these lineups have a purpose behind them. I will go into what that purpose is and talk about some of the things that might determine who gets minutes and who doesn't, as well as what positions certain players play. This Blazers team is extremely small, they don't have a lot of big man depth, and it's hard to truly figure out something that works. But I'll have something as far as a 12-man rotation, as something as small as a 7 super small ball lineup, and everything in between. But first, hit that subscribe button down below to join the movement, and leave a like on this video, it helps me out. We will be streaming twice a week over the off season on our streaming channel, link in the description box below. And let's jump into these lineups. The first one is going to be my official prediction for what I think Chauncey Billups will try and do with this team next season. Now, the numbers next to each player's names are minutes. So in my official prediction, I have Damian Lillard being staggered with Anthony Simons, who also plays the backup point guard role, much like Dame and CJ McCollum used to do. Gary Payton II and Josh Hart are the backup 2 and 3. You don't have to pigeonhole one of those players specifically as the shooting guard or the small forward in my opinion, but Josh Hart is getting a little bit more minutes than Gary Payton II. He's getting 26 minutes in total, Payton's getting 22. Nasir Little, I have a feeling, will be the starter next year. The problem is with Nasir Little starting is you have to play him a majority of his minutes at small forward in order for that to make sense. You're not going to start a guy for both halves and only play him a couple minutes, then sub somebody out at the start of each half. Normally starting lineups play 5 to 6 minutes together to start each half. So that would mean Nasir Little would have to play at least about 12 minutes a game at small forward. I have him getting 16. I think Shaedon Sharpe will win his way into the rotation. Given how this organization thinks about him and feels about him, I feel like they're going to try and get him minutes right away. I think he'll play about 12 minutes a game at the backup small forward or shooting guard role. You can flip some of those minutes with Hart. The positions are fluid. I think Grant will see about 26 minutes a game at the starting power forward spot and play some small ball 5. Now, the problem with that is Jeremy Grant is not a good rebounder. However, there's really no reason why Jeremy Grant is a bad rebounder. Hopefully, he can look at what Andrew Wiggins did this year, where he went from being a horrible rebounder to a really good one, especially in the finals, and we can see some of the same about Jeremy Grant because he's lengthy and he's pretty athletic. No reason why he shouldn't rebound, but you have guys like Josh Hart, who's a phenomenal rebounder for a wing. Gary Payton II can rebound a little bit. Nasir Little is a good rebounder. So if you're going to play Jeremy Grant at some backup 5, you're going to have to pair some good rebounders next to him. I think Drew Eubanks will end up being the backup center. I've been on the record talking about how I'm not a huge fan of that. I think that it's going to come down to Eubanks versus Watt for that backup center spot. I don't like the Blazers' backup center depth overall, but I don't think they're going to do anything to address it, and I think Eubanks is going to be the backup center going into next year. The other key thing of note here is Justice Winslow getting 18 minutes a game. Given how Joe Cronin has talked about him in the past, I think Justice Winslow is definitely going to be in the rotation next year. However, I'm not the biggest fan of that. Now, up next is going to be what I think should happen, and I think there should be a battle for the last rotation spot between Shaedon Sharpe and Jabari Walker. Now, you could maybe throw a Justice Winslow into that mix, but in my opinion, I think one of those two guys should be in the last rotation spot. Now, here's the thing. Those guys don't play the same position, but you do have players that bridge the gap between their positions, like a Nasir Little, a Josh Hart, etc., where you can move those guys around to different positions and clear minutes for either Shaedon Sharpe or Jabari Walker. So these next two lineups are what I would do dependent upon who wins that final rotation spot. The first one is going to be if Sharpe wins minutes. It's a pretty clear-cut 9-man rotation. I would play Damian Lillard 35 minutes a game. Some people have said to play him less. However, I think if you play Dame less than about 35, 36 minutes per game, you drastically decrease your chances of winning, and I think he's healthy. I think you have to play him 35, 36 minutes a game. Simons I have getting 34, staggered with Dame once again. Gary Payton II playing all the backup shooting guard minutes. Now, I would start Josh Hart over Nasir Little because if Shaedon Sharpe wins minutes at the shooting guard or small forward position, if you're playing Nasir Little a lot of minutes at small forward, you don't have enough minutes for Sharpe. Therefore, in order to clear the room for Sharp, you have to play Nas at the backup 4 and go a little bit smaller. You will see how this will change when we jump into the next slide. Jeremy Grant, I have 32 minutes a game, 26 at power forward. Watford, I would have as the backup center if I had to choose right now. Nasir Little, 22 minutes a game at the backup power forward spot. Now in this next slide, I'm taking Sharp 16 minutes and giving them to Jabari Walker. That opens up more minutes at the small forward spot, and Jabari Walker, I think, is a power forward, so Nasir Little has more minutes available to him at the 3, meaning that you could start him, and if Jabari Walker wins that final role, then I would probably start Nasir Little. Now, obviously, whether or not Nasir Little or Josh Hart starts at the 3 should also be dependent on how those guys perform in training camp and in the preseason. However, I kind of like the idea of Josh Hart and Gary Payton II coming off the bench defensively. Now, all the other players are receiving the same amount of minutes per game. You just have Jabari Walker as the backup 4, Nas as the starting 3, and Josh Hart as the backup 3. Now, these are regular season lineups. Once the playoffs roll around, rotations usually get cut and not as many players play. This next lineup slide is going to have that in mind. Now, here is an 8-man rotation for what I would do in the playoffs. Dame and Ant would see more minutes at the expense of Gary Payton II simply because they are better players. Now, you might need to play Gary Payton II a little bit more depending on what the defensive matchups are. Obviously, you don't go into the playoffs with set true rotations for an entire series. This is just kind of what I would expect on average. Gary Payton does get 6 minutes of the backup small forward spot though, so he's still playing 28 minutes a game. You cut out Jabari Walker or Shaedon Sharp in this scenario, clearing more minutes for Nasir Little as well, and Jeremy Grant gets a couple more minutes at the power forward position. This is probably the best balance for an 8-man rotation where guys are getting the minutes they deserve. Dame playing 38 minutes a game isn't a lot for the playoffs. In the past, he's played more. Simon's playing 36 minutes a game is less than CJ McCollum would play in the playoffs of years past. Grant getting 35 isn't anything crazy. Hart getting 32. Nas, Gary Payton, and Yusuf Nurkic getting 28. This is an 8-man rotation, but it's hard to even say guys are playing too much. These are kind of the minutes that these guys deserve. However, with a bigger rotation in the regular season, guys are probably going to be playing a few less minutes per game. Now, obviously, I'm gonna knock on wood and say that hopefully injuries don't hit, but injuries have a way of sorting out some lineup issues and some minutes crunches. The Blazers might elect to rest Dame a couple more games this year. That would open up minutes, so there's still a chance that these guys are playing more. So always keep that in mind with these lineups. But this playoff rotation is most likely if everyone's healthy, fingers crossed for that, and if the Blazers, of course, don't make a move at the trade deadline. Next up is a 12-man rotation. I think the Blazers might elect to play 11 or 12 guys. Jabari Walker looks good. Shaedon Sharp's the prize rookie. And if the Blazers are going to play with a lot of energy and a really aggressive defensive style, players might get tired a little bit faster. And maybe this minutes allotment is fine for everyone. The minutes for pretty much all these guys I think are too low, but that's just what you got to do in a 12-man rotation. Dame, 33 minutes a game is probably a career low. Simon's 32. Josh Hart playing 25, I think he deserves around 30. Gary Payton playing 23, I think he deserves about 25 to 28. Jeremy Grant only 28 minutes. No backup center minutes is a little bit low as well. But you got Justice Winslow and Jabari Walker playing a lot of backup 4. You got Trendon Watford and Drew Eubanks playing some backup 5 behind Yusuf Nurkic. I think that could be the case with Nurkic if the Blazers don't want to play Grant at a small ball 5 spot. And this is the best way that I could fit these 12 guys into a lineup. Of course, you can give your minutes breakdowns down in the comment section below for any of these lineup ideas. Do you have a 12-man rotation that you think has a better minutes allotment for these guys? Let me know down in the comment section below. Just format it like this, and I'm curious to read some of your potential rotations. Next up is super small ball, where only 7 players play. This is basically the opposite of the last lineup, and these are the top 7 players on the team in my opinion. Dame, Ant, Hart, Grant, Nurkic, Nurkic, Peyton, and Nasir Little. Now, in that scenario, Grant's going to have to split his time between the starting 4 spot and the backup 5 spot, which I've already discussed some of the potential problems with him there, especially if you're playing him more than 5-6 minutes a game. Every player in this rotation is getting at least 30 minutes a game. Dame is the high at 38, and this would probably only be a very sporadic lineup in the regular season, depending on who the Blazers play. Obviously, if the Blazers play the Minnesota Timberwolves and they elect to stagger Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, you don't want Jeremy Grant guarding either of those guys, probably. I mean, maybe he could do an okay job on Cat, but rebounding would definitely be an issue. But if you face a team like the Golden State Warriors, who likes to go small, where Draymond Green plays a lot of backup 5, then you could probably get away with a lineup like this. You're not going to play Damian Lillard 38 minutes in the regular season, so this might be more of a playoff thing, but you could also give a couple of Dame's minutes to Gary Payton II. You could move minutes around a little bit, and honestly, this minutes allotment for it being a 7-man rotation isn't as crazy as I thought it would be. And last but not least, we just looked at small ball. Let's look at a bully ball lineup, which features Jabari Walker as the starting 3. You also see a little bit of Trendon Watford at the power forward spot, as well as him playing some backup center behind Drew Eubanks and Yusuf Nurkic. Yusuf Nurkic gets 30 minutes a game because if you're going to call it a bully ball lineup, you have to play Yusuf Nurkic at least 30 minutes a game. But Jabari Walker would be interesting as the starting 3, maybe the token starter, much like the Blazers used Noah Vonleh in years past. I still think the minutes for Gary Payton II and Josh Hart are a little bit too low in this lineup. Same thing with the starting guards with Simons and Dame. But if there's no consensus starting small forward, depending on who you play, I mean, you might use the starting lineup. The best matchup to use this lineup against might be a Cleveland Cavaliers team who last season started Lauri Markkanen, a 7-footer, at the small forward spot a lot, with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen as their starting bigs. The Blazers do have some lineup versatility to throw out against certain matchups, and I do like that. They can go small with the best of them, in my opinion. Going a little bit bigger creates some problems, as it would for any undersized team, and I'm still not a fan of the backup center position. I think that if the Blazers can trade out Aditi Lozada to open up a roster spot, they should definitely look to add a little bit more depth at the backup 5 position. There's not many great targets out there, but maybe LaMarcus Aldridge comes back, maybe a DeMarcus Cousins. Just go for a little bit more size and a little bit more of a proven commodity than a Drew Eubanks or Trendon Watford. I like Watford. He's just undersized for the backup center spot. His standing reach is 8'9", which is pretty much equal to Nasir Little's and only 1.5 inches taller than Shaedon Sharp's. I would like Grant more at the 5, but he has to rebound better. So the backup 5 position is definitely questionable, but let me know what you think about any of these lineups down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of the backup 5 spot. Who would you play at the backup 5? Would you stagger Dame and Ant? And if not, how would you sort out the minutes and who would be the point guard when both those guys are off the floor? Let me know all your lineup thoughts down in that comment section. I enjoy reading what you guys have to say. Tomorrow I will drop a mailbag. I'm going to post a community tab prompt for mailbag questions. So if you're watching this the day I dropped it, go to the community section and ask me a question. With that being said, I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.